Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Tuesday, August 15th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We've got a lot to get into today on the show. It is, in fact, Tuesday, August 15th here today. Just about halfway through the month of August as we get closer to September, closer to football season. You can smell football season. It is in the air. It is an exciting time of year to be a sports fan, especially if you're a New York football fan with so much optimism surrounding both the New York Jets and obviously the New York Giants as well. We'll get into a little bit of football to start off today's show. We'll be talking all things New York Jets and Dalvin Cook as the Jets go out and sign the veteran running back to a one-year deal worth up to $8.6 million. They get the deal done through the visits, through all the rumors, through all of the media talking about the different scenarios. Dalvin Cook ends up with the New York Jets, and he is now officially the running back duo, or the second running back of the duo with Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, as we just got news about 10 minutes ago that Breece Hall was activated off the PUP list, and he'll be out there practicing today for day number 15 of New York Jets training camp. So, a lot to get into there. We'll get into Dalvin Cook. The second topic of the day, I also want to get into the MLB Wild Card standings, give you where teams currently stand in the Wild Card standings, some of the strength of schedule, teams with the easiest schedule remaining, teams with the toughest schedules remaining. We'll get into that as well a little bit later on in the show after we break down the Dalvin Cook signing, and then we'll get you ready for the Yankees and Mets tonight. I mean, if you're a Yankees fan, what more do I have to say? I mean, I knew last night was going to be a disaster. I didn't expect. I said it on the show. I said 10-2. The game was what, 11-3. I forget the score. I mean, I believe it was 10-2, or I said I apologize. My prediction was 10-2. They lost 11-3, so I was right on. I think tonight I said 9-3 or something like that. Although with Sevy on the mound, I mean, Clark Schmidt let up 8 runs in 2 innings. Sevy tonight might let up 8 runs before even getting an out. I don't know. I don't think it's fair to Sevy to send him out there tonight. I mean, that's just not even fair. The guy's going to get crushed. He's going to get crushed. And if he doesn't, I'll be the first one to come on here on the podcast and give him credit. I mean, if he goes out there and gives us 4 innings of 4 runs, I will be pleasantly surprised. I would be. I don't think he gets out of the second inning tonight. I really don't. I think the Braves are just going to absolutely dominate him coming up tonight, because you saw what they did last night with Clark. You see the more boneheaded base running mistakes. You see Aaron Boone take no accountability with the base running mistakes. Last night was just another disaster at the ballpark for the New York Yankees. Nothing you could do about it. So, anyway, that'll do it for the intro here. We'll get to the Yankees and Mets, obviously, later on. Get you ready for the game tonight. I don't even know. Again, I have no expectations at this point, so anything at this point to me, if they win a game, that's a plus, because my confidence is so low. The hope in this team is so low. If they do anything positive, that's a plus. That's a overachievement at this point in the season. But you do have Hard Knocks tonight, which is very good. We'll watch Sevy get crushed, and then we can watch the Hard Knocks so we can get ready for the real excitement, and that is the New York Jets this season, not the New York Yankees. So we'll start today talking about the New York Jets, as Hard Knocks will obviously be on tonight. And yesterday was kind of a quiet day in the NFL world, because the New York Jet, or in the Jet world anyway, because there was no practice coming off, obviously, of the preseason game on Saturday where the Jets got the win 27-0. Day off on Sunday, day off on Monday. They'll be back today in Florham Park for another training camp practice before welcoming the Bucks in tomorrow for a joint practice, which is super exciting. Definitely looking forward to that. But yesterday, while it was kind of a quiet day, didn't expect a ton to happen. Later on in that day, pretty much like 6:30 or so, 7 o'clock-ish, somewhere around there, like 6-ish, or was it 7 o'clock? Or I think it was 7 o'clock-ish Eastern. You get the news coming out from Adam Schefter that the New York Jets have signed running back Dalvin Cook. And it was a big-time acquisition, big-time breaking news if you're a New York Jets fan. Big-time breaking news in the NFL world, because Dalvin Cook has been available for a while. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He brings a lot to the table, been one of the better running backs in football over the last couple seasons. He's not quite the player he once was, but a couple years ago, he was up there in top of the league in terms of one of the best running backs, dual-threat running backs in the NFL, both as a pass catcher and obviously as a rusher. So there's a lot to like when it comes to this move. It is a 1-year deal, $8.6 million deal. And obviously, it's up to $8.6 million. It's a 1-year, up to $8.6 million deal. The original reports are saying that it's a $7 million base salary with $1.6 million in incentives. Again, nothing's official yet. Cook has to officially put pen to paper, and then you'll get the whole logistics of the contract. But the early reports are saying 1 year up to $8.6 million, and that $8.6 million, it's a $7 million base salary, and it can get up to $8.6 with $1.6 million in incentives. So look out for that. Those numbers will obviously come out more here over the next couple days once he puts pen to paper and the official contract comes out. But those are the early numbers. And look, as a Jet fan, I've been talking about this for a while. I like this move for many reasons. There's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of chaos about it. A couple weeks ago, he was at Jets training camp. It was kind of weird. It was almost like he was already a member of the team. He had a visit. He was on the sidelines talking to guys. It was almost like he was just an injured player on the sidelines that was a member of a team. That's how much access they gave him. That's how much freedom he had. It wasn't like your typical visit to an NFL team. He was more just free range, do whatever he want, watch practice, put himself in the put himself kind of in the locker room already, and that's kind of what it was. And it was a little bit surprising to see that, but it was almost like, yeah, something's going to get done. He leaves training camp that day. There wasn't anything that got done. You've heard many reports that the teams were off on numbers. Some of the teams were off on, obviously, they were off on, how much his role was going to be. Some reports said that the Jets want him to be a 2. Dalvin Cook wanted to be a 1. However, all that is, obviously none of it's true. Because I thought for a while there he would go down to Miami and play with his his hometown team. Obviously went to Florida State, played for the Seminoles, obviously now with the Jets, but grew up in Miami, was born in Miami. I thought for sure he'd go down to the Dolphins, and because they need him a lot. I think they need him more than the Jets probably do, but adding Dalvin Cook is certainly a big boost for this team. But I thought he'd go down to Miami, his hometown team. That was just me. But obviously none of that's true. He wanted to be here. He wants to play for a contender, and those are what all the reports are saying, and that's what Dalvin Cook wants to do. Earlier that day you saw Ezekiel Elliott go to New England. Right then and there, boom, Dalvin Cook going to the New York Jets. And there's been some reports, too, that he has taken less money to play with the Jets than the New England Patriots offered him because he wants to play for a contender. How sweet does that sound if you're a New York Jets fan? He took less money to come play for the Jets than New England. How sweet does that sound? I mean, that sounds amazing. New England all these years crushing us, dominating us. Finally, we have taken a step ahead of them, and now you got to do it on the field and beat New England week 3. You have to crush New England week 3. You have to. That's a must-win in my eyes. Just for ending the drought, getting the job done, dominating a team that's not in good. You are better than New England Patriots. They got to beat them week 3 now. But it's a very good move for the Jets. Again, kind of what I said earlier. Some of the reasons why I like this move is, number one, this Jets running back room is a very, very young core. It's a very young core. It's Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Izzy, Bam Knight. Now, one of those guys is going to get cut. Not Breece Hall, obviously. Michael Carter, Bam Knight, Izzy, those 3 guys are going to fight for the final 2 spots. Now, with Breece coming off a PUP list, one of those guys is now going to get cut before the season starts. So how do the Jets play that out? How do the Jets factor that into their decision? Roll them out there for the next 2 preseason games, and let's see what, each running back can do. I think Izzy makes the roster. Ultimately, I think it's down to Michael Carter or Bam Knight. And ultimately, I think Michael Carter is going to make this roster. We'll get into that here more in a second. But again, Michael Carter is currently the oldest running back in this room. He's 24 years old, and he's the most veteran. He's the longest tenured running back in this room. This is his 3rd season. He's the veteran in the room. That's not nothing against Michael Carter, but the Jets don't have a true veteran, leader, experienced guy in that room. And we've been talking about this for a while, even going back to like Tevin Coleman of last season where they cut him. It was a little bit of head-scratching because he was the veteran in the room. You went with a really young room last year. This year, another very young room. You knew you wanted to bring in a veteran, and this has been something that's been in discussion since June. And now you bring in Dalvin Cook, a true veteran. He's been in the NFL for 6 seasons. This is his 7th year in the league. He's got experience. He's had 4 1,000-yard rushing seasons in each of the last 4 seasons. 4 of his 6 years in the NFL, 1,000 yards plus rushing, and 4 of the 6 years he's been in the Pro Bowl. He's been one of the better running backs in football over the course of the last 4 seasons. Now, he's not the same player he once was. He's not. But you don't need him to be that 1,000-yard, that 1,500-yard rusher because you have Breece Hall. You need him to be a very good complement to Breece Hall this upcoming season. You need him to take some of the carries, take some of the weight off of Breece Hall's shoulders early in the season when Breece Hall is kind of easing his way back into things from the torn ACL. And you trust Dalvin Cook can do that because of the experience, because of the leadership, because of mostly the experience, and he's been in the league for a while and he's done it before. Guy that's very good out of the backfield as a pass catcher, decent in blitz pickup, and very good as a rusher, obviously, with those 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He brings a lot to the table. The biggest thing to me is he brings leadership, brings experience. This running back room needed that. They haven't had that. You get that now in Dalvin Cook, and he was better than the Kareem Hunts, the Leonard Fournette. He was the most talented running back on the open market. I don't think there's much debate. He's better than Ezekiel Elliott. He's better than Leonard Fournette, better than Kareem Hunt. I don't really think there's much debate about that. Maybe Dolphins fans are debating about that, but I don't think there is. So this is a very good move for the Jets. And here's my thing. For the Jets fans that maybe don't like this move, here is my question to you. Did the Jets get better yesterday? Did they get better? And the answer is you don't have to know a ton about football to know that the New York Jets got better. They acquired a 4-time Pro Bowler. They acquired a guy that has 4 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons. They got better yesterday. There's no debate about it. And at the end of the day, when you're going all in for a championship, when you're going all in with Aaron Rodgers, when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, you need to go all in. You need to bring in the most talent possible. And the New York Jets yesterday formed one of the best 1-2 punches in all the NFL with Breece Hall, who obviously just got activated off the PUP list this morning, and now adding Dalvin Cook to what was already a very young, explosive, talented running back room. So the Jets got better yesterday. And you don't want to walk away from these 2 years with Aaron Rodgers questioning, did we give him enough? Did we give him? No, we've given Aaron Rodgers everything. The only concern is the offensive line, and that is a major concern, don't get me wrong, and hopefully they can get that straightened out. But when you talk about the skill positions, this team has some of the best skill position talent in the NFL. I mean, Garrett Wilson's probably going to enter his name into being a top 6, top 5 receiver in the NFL when all is said and done this year. Again, he got 1,100 yards last year in the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. You give him Aaron Rodgers, he can take a massive year 2 jump. You've got guys like Allen Lazard, got McCole Harmon, so you've got a nice supporting cast. Again, you've got a solid tight end core in Jeremy Ruckert, Tyler Conklin, Uzama. Nothing too crazy, but they're getting utilized more, and they're good tight ends when they're utilized more. The Jets just didn't utilize them the right way last year. Hackett likes to do that. He likes to utilize the tight ends more, which is, you don't have to have much common sense to realize using a tight ends helps you in football games. The Jets for years now, since Dustin Keller, haven't realized that, but that's besides the point. And now they just added a running back in Dalvin Cook, which forms a very good 1-2 punch. So the Jets got better yesterday. They got better. And that's the biggest thing. Putting as much talent around around this team, around Aaron Rodgers, as you can. And yesterday they improved in a big way, acquiring a 4-time Pro Bowler. I know he might not quite be the same player, but anytime you acquire a 4-time Pro Bowler, guy that has rushed for 4,000 or 5,000 plus yards in his career, 4 years, 1,000 plus each of the last 4 seasons, it's a plus. It's a bonus for this team. And again, 5,993 rushing yards in his career. So now week 1, you'll get Dalvin Cook and James Cook, the brothers. Buffalo, Jets, week 1, Dalvin Cook, James Cook. Looking forward to that. Another storyline to add to that matchup. You've already got the Aaron Rodgers storyline. Now you've got the Cook brothers going out. That's a storyline. And James Cook, let me tell you, he's going to be a very good running back in this NFL. He showed a lot of flashes last year, looked good in the preseason, looked good in training camp. So it's going to be some fun battles this year with both Cook brothers in the division. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, about both guys potentially, both guys potentially facing off in, an AFC championship game or a late game in Buffalo later in the season that could dictate the division, decide the division. It's going to be a lot of fun to see both the Cook brothers go at it. So looking forward to those matchups as well. But the Jets got better, and that's all that matters. And again, when you look at this offseason as a whole, you kind of put the icing on the cake because I think a lot of people wanted a veteran running back. The Jets got him. Obviously the Jets fixed a lot of other needs. But when you look at this team right now, there is a lot more strengths than there is holes. And I know the holes are glaring, but quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, D-line, secondary, you feel really good about. Linebacker, there's a little bit of concern there, but the depth is actually, the linebacker groups have actually played really well during the preseason, so you feel a little bit more confident about that. But again, Jamie and Sherwood, you still got to see him develop, still got to see him go out there and full regular season, all these games, and play well. So there is a little bit of a learning curve potentially to be expected there. Defensive line is one of the best in football. I think the D-line might have potential to be even better than the secondary, and we talk very highly of the secondary, rightfully so. This D-line is really good. And then you look at the offensive line, that is a big concern. It is. But I think when you look at it, you can look at it from two perspectives and say, there's no way Dwayne Brown comes back healthy. There's no way Becton's right. There's no way AVT moves to tackle again and plays as well as he was earlier. Like, there's no way. You could also look at it and say, well, you might have your tackle in AVT. Then you could shift somebody to guard. McGovern's played guard before, and then maybe you have Dwayne Brown and AVT. The one thing I will say is you cannot have Billy Turnstile playing week 1. You cannot do that. You just can't. I don't know what they see in Billy Turner, but nobody's seen anything positive out of that guy. I don't know if the coaching staff sees something in him, but either way. So that's the one thing that's got to get fixed is the offensive line. And that's a massive need, don't get me wrong. But when you look at these other needs, like the veteran running back, the Jets got that checked it off the box. And now you get into who might get cut. I think Izzy's going to make this roster. It's going to be Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook. Izzy's going to be your number 4. And it's going to be a battle between Bam and Michael Carter. Now, I have kind of two ways I'm looking at this. Number one, I think if you're going to cut somebody, it's going to be Bam. Because Bam, I think there's a good chance he can still clear waivers and make it to the practice squad. I don't think Michael Carter would clear waivers. Not that I don't think he won't. So if you want to just cut somebody, cut Bam. Now, I could also look at it from this perspective. If the New York Jets offensive line continues to struggle and either Dwayne Brown hasn't come back yet or, I don't know, a week or two from now, it continues to struggle, and they're looking at offensive tackle help, offensive line help, potentially trading for somebody, you can probably get an offensive tackle, offensive lineman with Michael Carter in a deal package, maybe some picks, maybe another guy, I don't know, but you can get something for Michael Carter. So if the Jets don't feel Michael Carter's going to fit, they can trade him and maybe get an offensive lineman. Or maybe that's the Jets' approach. Trade him, get an offensive lineman in return. Potentially that could be the case. But other than that, I think Michael Carter's going to make this roster. He's entering year number 3, looked really good in that preseason game, has looked good in camp. I know Bam has probably been the best running back in camp, but I still think you can stash Bam Knight on the practice squad. You're not going to be able to stash Michael Carter on the team or on the practice squad. You're just not going to be able to do that. And the guy had a great rookie year. He struggled last year, obviously, but a team's going to take a chance on him. If you got something for Denzel Mims, you could get something for Michael Carter. So I do hope if the Jets, and I don't want them to cut Michael Carter because I like Michael Carter a lot, but if they do feel like to move on from Michael Carter, I'd prefer them trade him and get something for him rather than just flat out cut him, because I think you can get value for Michael Carter, not Bam Knight. But I do end up seeing Bam Knight getting cut. I do, because I think the Jets will go with a little bit more experience on Carter. He's a little bit more, very good pass catcher. Jets value that. I think he's a more dual threat running back, better than Bam. Bam was good last year, but it was such a small sample size. When Michael Carter has his whole rookie year to look back on and say, man, if that guy's right, I mean, that's really good. And you're not going to cut Izzy. You're not going to cut a rookie because you're not going to do that. You're not going to give up on a draft pick before he's played one regular season game. And he's also looked very good during the preseason. Now, I know earlier in the preseason, earlier in training camp, I thought maybe you cut Izzy because he was struggling early on, but I was a little impatient, I will admit. I was wrong about that. I would not cut Izzy now. I would not. I was wrong. That was a bad take by me. But cutting Bam Knight, you could probably get something. You could probably get him back. So it'll be interesting. But obviously, a lot to look forward to this season. Another piece for this Jet team, for this Jet roster. Another piece of talent. And obviously, a lot of excitement. So now we move on here to a little bit of baseball as the wild card standings continue to heat up. Actually, first of all, hit me up on Twitter at Bubbs52 or in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on this move? Actually, comment section down below. That's easiest. What are your thoughts on this move, bringing in Dalvin Cook? You like it, don't like it, don't, kind of in the middle, you like it and don't like it. How do you feel about this move, and what do you think he provides to this New York Jets team? Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall off the PUP list, 1-2 punch, ready for week 1. Man, the excitement around this running back room is definitely high, and I don't even know. It's been like 15 hours. The last 15 hours for the New York Jets running back room has been a wild one with the signing of Dalvin Cook and now Breece Hall getting active off the PUP list. All right, so now we move on here to the MLB. Now we officially move on here to the MLB as we officially roll on here to August 15th. We are halfway through the month of August. September will be the last month for the MLB season, and then October baseball begins. Unfortunately, when you look at it from a New York baseball perspective, there is zero excitement going into October baseball because you don't have the Mets or the Yankees participating in the postseason. Yes, I've already called the Yankees out. They have no chance of making the playoffs. I don't believe in them at all. The Yankees are out of it. They're 5.5 games out after last night's latest debacle in an 11-3 loss to the Braves. They are 60-59 in the year, 5.5 games out of a final wild card spot, and they're 3-7 in the last 10. Have lost 3 straight going back to that Miami series and then obviously last night. So it is brutal. It is brutal. The Yankees stink. We've talked about this. They're not going anywhere. So from a New York baseball perspective, Yankee Stadium and Citi Field will be pretty quiet this October, which is disappointing because you went into this season with the expectation for the Mets to potentially go for a championship. I didn't have very high expectations for the Yankees this year, but they did get, I expected them to at least get to the postseason again. I will tell you that. I would have lost the bet that they missed the postseason. I would have thought they would have at least made the postseason, especially the way they started, where they won their first 5 series in a row. They were playing well early on in the season, and then they just fell apart. The talent discrepancy kind of just hit them, and they fell apart. You've had some really bad performances. Like the guys like Stan have not stepped up this year. Rodon obviously hurt early in the season, has come back and been terrible. There's been so many internal issues with this team from the front office down, not doing anything at the deadline. There's a lot of problems. So to say that if you told me at the beginning of the season, I'd be sitting here in August or September talking about the NL and AL wildcard spots and not have the Yankees or the Mets included, I would have thought you were crazy. Maybe I guess if both teams were leading the division, but I didn't expect the Yankees to probably win a division, nor did I expect the Mets to surpass the Braves. I don't know what all my predictions were, but if you would have told me that, I'd be sitting here right now not talking about the Yankees and Mets being in the postseason, I would have thought you were crazy. Either way, because I think the Yankees, even with the questions going into the year, I thought they'd still find a way to make the postseason. And I thought the Mets would definitely find a way. I thought the Mets had a good chance of getting to a World Series this year. That's how talented their team looked on paper. They won 101 games last year. They got only better in the offseason. That's how I viewed it. But it was a disaster. Sometimes that happens. Either way, you now have to look at it from an outsider perspective, or at least I do, as to how these wild card standings currently look and how these playoffs and these playoff positions currently look here for the AL and the NL. So when you look at the American League, the Rays are 72-49. They're 5.5 games up in that first wild card spot. The Astros are currently holding the second wild card spot. They are 68-52. They are 2 games up on that final wild card spot. And the Blue Jays, or that second wild card spot, the Blue Jays currently hold the final wild card spot with a record of 66-64. They are 2 games up on the Mariners, 3 games up on the Red Sox, and every team after that is irrelevant because neither of those teams have chances. The Yankees, Angels, Cleveland, and it just gets completely out of hand. So that's your wild card right now. Now, obviously, the most realistic team to get back in is Seattle. And I will say this, Seattle's strength of schedule the rest of the way is very favorable. They currently have the 27th hardest schedule. They have the third, in other words, they have the third easiest or fourth easiest schedule left this season. With a combined winning percentage, their opponents are a combined winning percentage of .476. Some of their easy games coming up on their schedule. They've got 3 against Kansas City, 6 against Kansas City, 6 against the A's, 3 against the Mets, 3 against the Angels, 3 against the White Sox. Some of their tougher matchups, Dodgers, Astros still for 2 more series. They've got 7 more against the Rangers, 4 against the Rays, 3 more against the Reds, but the Reds are definitely beatable. So really, when you look at the Mariners, they are very favorable in terms of their upcoming schedule. In terms of their strength of their upcoming schedule is very favorable. Now, when you look at the Blue Jays, because the Astros and the Rays are going to make it, I view them as making it. When you look at the Rays, or when you look at the Blue Jays, rather, they are currently 20th in strength of schedule, with the 20th hardest schedule with a combined winning percentage of .496. So a little bit harder than the Mariners, but nothing crazy. They've still got 3 against the A's, 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Guardians, 3 against Kansas City, and 3 against the Rockies. Now, their tough matchups come 6 against Tampa, 2 against Philly, 3 against Boston, 4 against Texas, 3 against Baltimore, 3 against Cincinnati. Now, those 2 against Philly will take place tonight and tomorrow. So just to leave a note on that. So that's where they currently stand. So when you look at it, the Mariners have the favorable schedule coming up. You've got guys like Julio Rodriguez. You've got a solid pitching staff, Logan Gilbert, pieces like that, George Kirby. There's a lot to like when it comes to that Mariners team. It's just the Blue Jays schedule isn't extremely hard. Not that the schedule means anything, but can they do enough? They are currently only 1 back in the loss column. At 55 losses, Blue Jays at 54. So how does that, how much does that easy schedule factor in for Seattle? So it'll be interesting. Boston's also still on the outside looking in. Now, when you look at it from a Boston perspective, they've got a very tough schedule. They've got the 3rd toughest schedule left in the MLB. .536 winning percentage. They've got 44 games left. 7 against Baltimore, 7 against Houston, 5 against Tampa, 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against Texas, 3 against Toronto. Their schedule left is a gauntlet. There's no other way to put it. Now, they can take, those 3 games against Toronto will be very important. The 7 against the Baltimore and 7 against the Astros, those 14 games are going to decide a lot. It's going to decide a lot. In my eyes, those 14 games will probably decide whether or not they make the playoffs. You can either look at those 14 games and they can go 4-10 or 7-7 or 10-4 or however it is, or 8-6, however it is. If they can find a way to play 500 baseball, maybe slightly above 500 baseball in those 14 games against the Blue Jays and the Astros, I think you certainly have a chance. And you've obviously got 5 against Tampa. So they've got like 19 really, really tough games. And the Dodgers are really tough too. So is Texas. Toronto's probably the easiest on that schedule. But Texas, they've got a gauntlet. 3rd hardest schedule left. So from a Boston perspective, when you just look at the schedule, it's a tough break for them. Because they are still 2 back in the loss column. They're 3 back overall, 62-56. They're 5-5 in the last 10. They're obviously just coming off of a series against the Tigers where they took 2 of 3. They're coming off a softer part of their schedule where they took 3 of 4 against the Royals, took 2 of 3 against the Tigers. They did get crushed against the Blue Jays at home. Now you've still got 6 games coming up, though. These 6 games are going to be big coming up for Boston because it's going to be 3 against the Nationals, 3 against the Yankees. And those are 6 very winnable games. They are. They can easily go 5-1 in those 6 games. Because you could probably sweep the Nationals, and the Yankees you probably take 2 of 3. Because the Yankees have found ways to win 1 game each series. So 5-1's realistic. But then after that, it's 4 against Houston. It's 3 against the Dodgers. It's 3 against Houston. And then it's the Rays, Orioles. It's tough after that. Rangers, Rays, Orioles again. Their schedule, the end of July, these next 6 games are very big because they're going to need to make up some ground before that really difficult stretch of games coming up for that Red Sox team. So the AL wild card's certainly interesting. I probably end up seeing, I do end up seeing Pride Toronto squeezing it out. You also got to realize Bo Bichette's on the IL right now, so they're not healthy with him. So once he comes back, you're going to get another bat to that lineup. The Mariners had an interesting deadline where they didn't do a whole lot. They kind of stood pat in a way and just kind of let things play out. Not like they did last year where they went out and bought. They got to the playoffs last year. Do the Mariners have enough in the tank? Or looking back on it, should they have went out and made more moves at the deadline? At the time of the deadline, they've been red hot since the deadline. They're one of the teams that have actually been red hot since the deadline. I mean, I know they've lost 3 straight, but they're still 7-3 in the last 10. There's been a lot of teams that went out and bought at the deadline that have really struggled. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. But those are your American League wildcard standings. Comment down below, who do you have taking it home in the American League wildcard? Astros, Rays currently holding those Rays, Astros holding those first 2 spots. Who gets that final spot? Now you go to the National League. Phillies are 65-54. They are first. in the National League Wild Card race, 2.5 games up. The Mariners are a half game up, or the Giants, rather, are a half game up, 63-56. Now, the National League Wild Card is completely ridiculous because you basically have 4 teams with a realistic shot at the final wild card. You even have San Francisco's not even completely safe. None of the teams in the wild card right now are even completely safe. The Phillies are going to make it. They're 2.5 up. But the Giants are a half game up. They're a 3-game losing streak away from potentially being out of the wild card. So the National League wild card this year is completely crazy. And you look at the Giants' schedule. They've got 2 against Tampa, or 3 against Tampa. They lost last night. They've got 3 against the Braves, and then 3 against the Phillies, and then 3 more against the Braves. So their schedule coming up brutal. There's a chance at the end of this week, the Giants don't currently hold a wild card spot. So Marlins, Cubs, Reds, Diamondbacks are all teams with realistic chances to make the wild card. After that, San Diego 6.5 and everybody else behind them. Chicago, Cincy are 1 game out. Miami currently holds the last wild card spot at 63-57. They are a game back in the loss column of the Giants, so there's a good chance they jump the Giants. They've won 3 straight. Giants are 3-7 in their last 10. Cubs are 1 game winning or 1 game out. Reds are 1 game out. Diamondbacks are 3.5 out. So that's your current standings right now. Well, when you look at the Giants' schedule, their strength of schedule is 5th hardest in the MLB. Now, right in front of them, they are tied with the same winning percentage. Marlins' strength of schedule, a .522 winning percentage. Giants' strength of schedule, a .522 winning percentage as well. So a very difficult schedule coming up for both those teams. Marlins have to play 3 against Atlanta, 2 against Houston, 6 against the Dodgers, 3 against Philly, 2 against the Rays, 7 against the Brewers. Those are your toughest matchups. Now, your easy games are 7 against the Nationals, 3 against the Pirates, 6 against the Mets, 3 against San Diego. Now, when you look at San Francisco, 6 against the Braves. Those 6 come up across these next 2 weeks. 3 against the Phillies, 3 against the Cubs, 3 against the Reds, 2 against the Diamondbacks, 7 against the Rockies, 7 against the Dodgers, 2 against the Rays. And then your easiest are the Rockies for 7, Diamondbacks for 2, Padres for 7, Guardians for 3. Now, the Diamondbacks are still fighting for a spot. So, wouldn't necessarily say that's completely the easiest matchup in the world. Now, the Diamondbacks have really struggled, especially since the deadline. They are 2-8 in their last 10. So that's the Marlins and the Giants schedules. Now, when you look outside, Cubs, Reds, Diamondbacks. We'll start with the Diamondbacks. They are 14th. Their rest of their winning percentage is .503 left. Some of their tough matchups, Dodgers, Orioles, Astros, Cubs for 7, Rangers, Giants for 2. Then you got the White Sox, the Rockies, San Diego, Mets still on your schedule. So that's where they currently stand. About a 500 schedule. It's an average schedule. Nothing too difficult, but they've also really struggled. They're right kind of in that middle at that 14th toughest schedule left. Now, when you look at it from a Cubs perspective, Cubs have the 28th hardest schedule, the 3rd easiest schedule left. 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against the Braves, 4 against the Reds, 6 against the Brewers, 3 against the Giants. Those are their toughest games. Outside of the 3 against the Braves, their remaining schedule is very favorable. And then it's 6 against the Rockies, 7 against the Pirates, 3 against the Royals, 2 against the White Sox, 3 against the Tigers, 7 against the Diamondbacks. So keeping Cody Bellinger, adding Jameer Candelario has been a big benefit to that Cubs team. When you look at the Marlins and the Giants, what they have to face and what the Giants are going through right now, there's a really good chance the Cubs could potentially jump a team like the Marlins or the Giants for that final wild card spot. And then finally, when you look at the Reds, 22nd in strength of schedule left. Blue Jays, Mariners, Giants, Twins, Cubs, all in their schedule. They've got the Pirates, Cardinals, Tigers, Angels, Guardians, Mets are some of the remaining teams there. Reds are one of those teams. They kind of did what the Orioles did last year. They didn't go all in. They are also 3-7 in the last 10. They struggled a little bit. They're one of those teams that they're kind of where the Royals were last year. Or Orioles, rather. They didn't go all in this year at the deadline. They're going to kind of roll with it. If they get in, nice. If they don't, you go out there next year. That's when you make some more moves in the offseason, develop more of the talent, and you go out next year, and then you've got to make the postseason. Excuse me. But actually, when you look at the NL Central. It's wide open still because the Cubs are 3.5 back of the Brewers, and so are the Reds. So there's still a good chance one of those teams could win the NL Central. When you look at the other division, Braves have run away with it. Dodgers have run away with it. The AL West is still open. Astros are only 3.5 back. The AL Central, it's still open, but it's over, basically. The Twins are probably going to win that. Guardians are 4.5 back. It's such a weird division. The AL East is still open, too, because the Rays are only 3 back of the Orioles. I'd assume the Orioles probably win in that division, but it's still close. It's still close. So those are your current wild card updates. How do you see it all playing out? Do you see it kind of holding pat? Do you see a team like the Cubs making a jump? Do the Diamondbacks get back to where they were early in the season and make a jump and get that final wild card spot? Do the Giants completely fall off and lose? They've got some tough games coming up. How does it all play out here in that NL wild card race, which is so wide open, and the schedule's coming up, and some of these teams got to face? You could definitely see some major movements incoming. So that'll do it for an episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Actually, quickly here before we head out, we got to get you ready tonight for the circuses in New York. So for the Mets, it's Mets-Pirates. Pirates got Bailey Falter on the mound. He's 0-7 with a 5.21 ERA. Mets got David Peterson on the mound. He's 3-7 with a 5.61 ERA. And as for the Yankees and the Braves, Yankees, Sevy's on the bump. He's 2-7 with an 8.06 ERA. And the Braves have Bryce Elder on the mound. He's 8-4 with a 3.64 ERA. So those are your pitching matchups tonight for Yankees-Braves at Truist Park in Atlanta. Game 2 of a 3-game set there in Atlanta. So that'll do it for another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Tomorrow will actually be a joint practice, Jets-Bucks. So I'll try to get a podcast out. If not, maybe a live stream. But if not, I will see you back here on Thursday. And I'll also have a In the Trench with Gangrene podcast out later today, along with a In the Trench with Gangrene podcast out tomorrow after joint practice. So we'll have a lot more content coming your way on those channels as well, if there isn't anything up here on tomorrow. So that'll do it for an episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.